I was by definition failing as my role as the CEO of the company. And even worse, I was disloyal to my investors. And now I'm like, oh, no, actually disloyal is the opposite. It's running myself into the ground.
Welcome to the Mastry Experience. I'm your host, Francesca Sipma, and we are diving deep into mental mastery. This is where self-awareness meets peak performance. You're going to witness the truth behind personal development, emotional breakthroughs, dissolving triggers, getting into flow state, discovering purpose, and most importantly, mastering intuitive action. And we do this through a process called HypnoBreathwork. This is your community committed to breaking behavior patterns, getting into alignment, pursuing excellence, and self-mastery. Let's do the work. This is the Mastry Experience. Shout out to Huel for sponsoring and partnering with the Mastry Experience. Brandon Hance, welcome to the Mastry Experience.
Let's go.
Let's do it. All right. We start every show off with a question from our Mastry Card deck. And your question today is, where are you still performing instead of being?
I think a lot. So I run a real estate investment and development company, and there's a lot that goes into that business that requires you to perform in a certain way to investors, to lenders in particular. And I've noticed that shift has begun to happen in the last, I'd say 6 to 12 months for me. But I still, every time I step in, I step back into the model and version of myself that I thought I had to be when I first started in that career.
I'm remembering a post that you wrote, I want to say a few months ago, where you were talking about how we sort of switch identities in front of investors and versus when we're being home. And it hit for me so hard because every time I go on vacation, I feel so guilty. And if I post it and people have a perception of me that I'm not working 24/7, it like eats at me and I feel this guilt. Do you still experience that, or have you transcended that one?
Yeah, it's like I have now completely changed my entire perspective because I know deep inside that my entire life is around optimization, around performance. Yeah. And so before it was all around managing the perception of my performance. So if you perceived that I was on vacation or at an event or doing anything other than slaving at the office, then I was by definition failing as my role as the CEO of the company. And even worse, I was disloyal to my investors. And now I'm like, oh, no, actually disloyal is the opposite. It's running myself into the ground. It's constraining my creativity, my imagination. It's not reflecting and taking time to refresh. That actually is worse for the business, worse for my investors. And so it was a huge reframing for me. But once I did that, everything kind of clicked. And then if the investors just didn't get that, then I just kind of got comfortable with, okay, well, you're just not the right investor for me.
What do you do if they're already in your company though?
That's a good question. So there's definitely there's multiple approaches. One is rip the Band-Aid off, and the other is just kind of a gradual test and make sure nothing explodes and take another step forward. I think what I've done it depends on your cap table. If you have 100 people, you're not going to go one by one. Yeah. If you have one or two major investors that ultimately invested in you, right? It's the relationship and the trust that they have in you as the entrepreneur, then I think you do have a responsibility, not just as the entrepreneur, but as a friend, somebody that you have a relationship with, to help them understand your current thinking, right? Your model of the world. And so I've done that. I've done that multiple times where I've actually sat down with investors, not to say, hey, I'm this brand new person, but to explain, here are my values, here's what's working for me, here's what's not working. And I wouldn't even say 9 times out of 10. I think 10 times out of 10, they've found it to be refreshing and they've always agreed with me. It was a very uncomfortable conversation to start, massive amounts of fear going into it, and every single time it worked out well. So real-time calibration is like one of my main values now.
That's incredible. I will say, hearing you say that, it's obviously inspiring and it's giving me some courage to have very real conversations. But I do feel, and you can call me out if this is a limiting belief, that there's a little bit of added pressure as a female founder of living up to a certain expectation and not letting other life responsibilities or emotions kind of affect you in business, to where I don't feel like it would be received well if I tried to have that conversation.
Well, first off, I'm not a female founder, so I don't know what your experience is like. I have been an investor in female-led companies, and I know from my perspective, when I made that investment, it was in part because they were female and because I had a belief that they had a certain perspective, a certain nuance that was distinct from the average male entrepreneur. And it was that specifically that made me excited to invest in them, because I thought it was that vantage point, that skill set that was going to allow them to lead the company successfully. So you may have something that you believe is, I need to be this way. And that way may be your prototype of what the male entrepreneur is. But I think more and more people are saying, man, female entrepreneurs understand, they're so much more passionate and sensitive and detail oriented and inclusive. And they see all of the details. And I would think that any sophisticated investor that invested in you specifically would see and appreciate those qualities in you. And if anything, would want you to double down on those.
Sophisticated investor is the key there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to set the stage a little bit, because you're a serial entrepreneur. You also have a history of being an elite athlete, and you're a dad of 3. You're an amazing husband. You're a great friend. And in 2019 or 2018, when I was going through my spiritual awakening, I was reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And in that book, there's this quiz, and one of the questions was, who do you admire most in the world? And I wrote down you. And you're too humble to ever give yourself that kind of credit. But I just want the audience to really understand how meaningful it is for me to have you here and to have this conversation with you, because you're now starting to share your knowledge and really some of the principles that you've learned as an athlete into business. And it's transforming my way of thinking. In my opinion, you have the most elite mindset of anybody I know. And I love hearing your wisdom. So can you set the stage for everybody what your athletic career was like in college?
I can, but I first want to just say thank you. For me, I've always, as you said, been an athlete, been an entrepreneur. Those are the two main identities that I've anchored my entire life around. And for a long time, I have had these ideas or other passions of mine that I wanted to explore more. And it was a huge fear factor for me to overcome that. And you were the one who actually displayed and was the role model of courage and vulnerability to put yourself out there. Because in similar ways, like, you were living a very similar lifestyle as me that was hard charging, fast paced, entrepreneur, very much in the world of materiality. I would say I was very similar in that regard. And you said, you know what, fuck that. That's not for me. I'm going to go down a different path. And there was a part of me when you did that I was like, oh, wow, the courage that she had to do that was beyond any courage that I felt like I had within me at that time. And so you've continued to kind of be that pace car. And so I just want to tell you, thank you to you for the role that you've played in my life, for giving me not just the role model, for the encouragement for me to feel more comfortable to lean into some of the ideas that hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. You make it very easy.
Athlete. So yeah, I mean, I grew up as an athlete. Pretty early on, so my mom at the time was dating a professional baseball player when I was a child for a very long time. They never got married, but they were together, and I lived with him for the majority of my childhood. And her brother, my uncle, was also a professional baseball player. So baseball should have been my sport, just in terms of like my size and skill set. But I remember as a kid in the Little League, it would be like, legs out, arms up, swing through. And I'm like, oh, hell no, I don't want to do this. These guys know way too much. They're way too critical. I'm going to go play a sport that they don't know anything about. And that was football for me. And immediately I fell in love with the game of football because I felt like it was the ultimate team sport. And I was really looking for camaraderie and connection and love, especially love from like males. I was raised, mostly by my mom. My dad played a huge role in my life, kind of, midway through my childhood and on. But at that phase of my life, I was really surrounded by women, my mom and my 2 grandmothers, which were amazing. And I wouldn't change anything about that. But I was really yearning for male love. And when I had my first exposure to football, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is what I absolutely love. So it really gave me a purpose. And then, as I mentioned, probably around 10, 11, 12, I started spending a lot more time with my dad. And my dad found football as a kind of point of entry into my life. And it wasn't the type of dad that was living voyeuristically through me, or that really wasn't it. It was that he found kind of a common language that he felt comfortable sharing with me. He just didn't know how to sit down and play whatever the hell I wanted to play at the time, He-Man or toys. He just couldn't connect with that. But football all of a sudden created kind of a channel, if you will, or like a medium for us to have a relationship that he felt he could begin to instill values in me that were most important to him. So things like having a goal, setting a plan, having the discipline to go execute that plan, and so forth. And so we began to share that. He began coaching the teams, and it became a really kind of a sacred relationship for me from that point forward. And so in part, that's what made me love the game so much. There was a million other reasons why, but we had that special relationship that really kind of coalesced around the game of football. And so I loved football. I did that all the way through college. So in high school, giving to kind of talk through this. So
I love it.
There was a quarterback at the time, I'm not sure if your viewers are football fans or not, named Drew Brees. And before Tom Brady beat his record, he was the all-time leading passer in the history of the NFL. He was at Purdue, and Purdue had this revolutionary offense, throwing the ball, almost every single play, shotgun, 5 wide. It was like an amazing situation. And I had a chance to go in there and replace him and be a starting quarterback as a true freshman. And so that was an extraordinary opportunity that I decided to accelerate my high school curriculum. So I actually graduated after my junior year. And so in order to do that, I was taking 2 classes before school, then I would have regular school, go to practice, and then I would go to an adult night school. I would take 2 or 3 classes at night, graduate, so that way at the end of my last game of my of the season, boom, I was on my way to Purdue. Went to Purdue, started my freshman year, did well, but then I blew out my right shoulder, the 9th game of the season, and I decided to transfer back home to USC. USC, I ended up backing up Matt Leinart, who won the Heisman Trophy, and I was there at probably the most opportune time in the history of the program. That was arguably the best team and the best program in the history of college football. We had an unbelievable run. So, people a lot of times will ask me, do you have regrets for transferring back home? And absolutely zero part of me has any regret. The memories, the lessons, the life experience that I had at USC was just extraordinary. So I'm very grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. How many books did you read when you were in college?
So I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but the book that you mentioned was the first book that I think I literally ever read in my life. I was an athlete, and most people know what I mean when I say that, which is like, so of course I wouldn't pay attention in school. That would be against my identity. That would be just like a nerd. So I always did well in school, but I wasn't the guy that like read a lot of books, and I certainly wasn't doing it as a hobby. And so I remember my aunt actually bought me that book. I think it was my sophomore or junior year at USC. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I literally had like a life-changing experience. Yeah. The idea that somebody could have decades of wisdom that they put into a book that you could just download into your brain in 5 hours. I'm like, this is the greatest technology on the planet. And so that year, I don't know, probably 100 books, I would guess. I read my junior year and did about the same my senior year. As
a football player at USC.
Yeah.
To me, that's already tells everybody what they need to know about you. Okay. After college, you made a pretty bold move and you went to India.
I did.
Can you tell us about that?
So I started a music technology company, and I knew pretty much nothing about the music business and nothing about technology. So it was a great start. And I was brainstorming ideas for the company at the USC library. And as I'm walking down the library, I hear this music, and I'm like, what's going on? So I peek in the window, and there's like 8 or 10 Indian dudes sitting literally cross-legged playing music. And I'm like, okay, Indian guys, library, music, somebody in here has got to know something that could help me. So I knock on the door. Long story short, I met my co-founder that night. So I said, hey, here's an idea that I'm working on. Clearly you guys like music. I would assume one of you knows something about technology. They were all, I think it was 9 of them. All 9 of them were PhD students in AI, actually. So 20 years ago, they were studying that. And there was one in particular that really liked my idea. We became fast friends and decided to co-found the company together. He's from Mumbai, and his family was in the software development business. And so his brother said, hey, I think I can find a location for you. I can help recruit kind of the initial people. So we said, okay, let's do it. So I went back there, and I lived in India for about 6 months.
You're like 23?
I was 23, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to India looking for a co-founder? Was that the purpose of being there?
No. I met the co-founder at USC.
Oh, at the USC.
And then we decided to basically set up shop to develop our kind of what we would think of now as an MVP. Although at that time, feels like a dinosaur saying this, but at that time, it really wasn't an MVP concept. It was more build the whole thing and then do this big launch. So we hired, I think at one point, we had like 53 software developers at our office in India. So we scaled up pretty quick, hired a bunch of people, and obviously I was learning on the fly, doing the best that I could, working around the clock. I didn't obviously have anything to do. I didn't have any friends, didn't know anybody. So it was all-in immersive experience for me.
When you started that story, my mind automatically was going to the time that you told me you attended laughing yoga.
Yes.
And so I thought you were already there. What was that experience like?
The laughing yoga, I actually didn't attend laughing yoga. I woke up my first day by laughing yoga. So I get in whatever time it was, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night is when I landed in Mumbai. Took forever to get there, baggage, logistics is not one of the local strong suits of the culture there. So I finally get to my place. And I don't know, I fell asleep at 2 or 3 in the morning or whatever it was. And I wake up to this shrieking laughing at like 5 in the morning. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I peek out the window and there's like 200-300 people right there in the corner just laughing their ass off. I'm like, what is going on? So this is my first day. So I go down there to see what's happening. And long story short, I'm like, this is hilarious. And I couldn't help myself but laugh myself. So the next thing you know, the next day I went and I did it. And I did it for probably like 2-3 weeks. Yeah.
I just feel like it's such a testament to your curiosity and your openness. When you were in India building, were you tapping into anything, because it's a spiritual place?
It is. Yeah, I would say that I was, not as much as I would be now.
Yeah.
But there were so many other things, it's really interesting. So we just got back, I guess it's been a few months now, but we were in Japan with my family. And it was the first time that I was able to make a very obvious one-to-one connection with the ideology of a people and then the lifestyle and environment of the people. So in Japan, for example, you get on the subways, and by the way, Tokyo is 4 times bigger than New York City. There's 39 million people that live there. It's this massive urban sprawl, and there is not a shred of trash anywhere in the city. You can't even find a trash can. So people are, one of the highest values is personal responsibility.
Yeah.
So one of those responsibilities is to keep our shared space clean. Mm-hmm. And so you are expected to keep your trash with you wherever you go. And so I'm out for the entire day with my wife, my 3 little kids, and imagine being at like Central Park. Okay, we'll buy the hot dog, we'll have the water, and then the churro, and the thing comes. By the end of the day, you have this giant, just trash everywhere. But that was amazing. That was such a unique thing about them. And then I shared a very similar experience on the subway that's jam-packed with people, but you could hear a pin drop. And the whole idea is that they had so much respect for the shared space that they didn't speak. But what was even more interesting for me is obviously we made a lot of noise. And I was trying, but I was with a 3, 5, and 8-year-old, and they were making noise. I didn't feel one sense of judgment from other people. So it wasn't like, oh, here's these crazy Americans being loud and messing up our zen. It was like, cool. I'm responsible for my part of our shared space, and I'm going to give you the space to do whatever you want with yours. And so not one person gave us the look that I think almost every American will look if they were disrupting their space here. So just 2 silly examples of kind of more recent revelations of how your belief system translate into every facet of society and life. My point in bringing up the Japanese story is I did experience a lot of that in India. And there was a lot of the things that when I first went in that frankly were jarring. It was such a counterculture to anything that I'd experienced in America that the initial response was jarring, maybe judgmental. And then over time, I began to appreciate, the ideas behind them. And ultimately how that behavior began to manifest was just through shared beliefs. And a lot of those beliefs were really, really beautiful. They're really about community and connection and humility and things of that nature that it took me almost all of 6 months. In fact, when I was leaving on my last day and I was saying goodbye to the family that pretty much was my caretaker for my time there, I didn't plan a speech or anything of that nature. I was just planning on giving them a hug and saying thank you. And something I was kind of inspired to share something with him. And right as I began to talk, I started crying. And I kind of had this download of all the things that I'm kind of just shared with you about these values that I learned that just hit me in that moment. And it's a shame that I experienced that on my last day and not my first day, because I think my experience would have been so different. But it was also such a beautiful gift, because now I look back through that paradigm and it kind of shapes my whole recollection of India.
I start every morning with breath work and meditation. I'm immediately in a creative flow state, and I get on my computer and I start banging out work. The next thing I know, it's already lunch and I haven't even eaten breakfast. Shout out to Huel for making sure that I'm still hitting my protein goals, because they have these delicious ready-to-drink meals packed with 35 grams of protein, 7 grams of fiber. We have 27 different vitamins and minerals. My favorite part, you guys, no artificial sweeteners, and it comes in so many delicious flavors, including this chocolate, peanut butter, and my personal favorite, the iced coffee. And if you're looking for something where you can add your own fruits and veggies to it, then check out the Huel protein. All the same nutrients, but you can make it a little bit creamier, a little bit thicker. Shout out to Huel for sponsoring the Mastery Experience, and you can use our exclusive 15% off code. That's Huel.com/mastery. And Huel is actually now in Targets near you. So check them out. Shout out to Huel for supporting the Mastery Experience. You just said it's a shame that I realized on my last day instead of my first day. And I'm thinking, what a gift to realize that at 23 years old and to have this cultural understanding and awareness of differences and to see the beauty in it, which I think has given you so much perspective. What happened with that first company? And tell us how you got to the second one and to where you are now.
Ooh, that's a long story. So that company, before we launched, we got offered by Guitar Center first and then Live Nation second to buy us for, it was like $45 and $65 million. That was pre-launch, pre-revenue. And just to give you a sense of our mindset, it was like, this is $1 billion or bust. We're going. So that was the idea that we had. Okay. And we developed a technology that had multiple patents issued. If you can think of when you log into a Mac, right? You just open your laptop. You have all of the icons. You can have multiple applications and windows going, drag and drop within. We built that within a browser interface. So it was kind of a revolutionary technology platform. But it got to like 95% complete and just never quite was able to get over the hump. And so we raised a lot of money. We hired a lot of brilliant people, and we were way ahead on the business development side in terms of forging strategic partnerships, entering into all types of exclusive content relationships with the major labels, with major recording artists, et cetera. And we just couldn't launch. It was literally a failure to launch. So it was devastating. And ultimately, we probably should have shut the company down. That was the overwhelming advice from my advisors, both formally and informally, and from our board. This was my first startup and my first experience. And coming from a background as an athlete, the idea of quitting was just so against my code. I've since learned the massive benefits of quitting. In fact, I read Annie Duke's book called Quit. It kind of changed my whole relationship with the idea of quitting. But at that time, quitting was like the ultimate bro code failure, basically. Yeah. And so I'm like, no, we're not going to quit. And I basically had a Jerry Maguire moment and kept 6 of my core people and said, we're going to do what we can, even though we don't have the capital, the team, whatever. We're going to take components of this platform and we're going to rebuild. And we're going to rebuild our own, and we're going to do it. And we did that. And we went back into market really as a platform to empower independent musicians. And within, I think, 18 months, we had over 500,000 independent musicians. We were the primary distribution channel for all indie musicians in North America. And then because our technology got so far, ahead of where the labels were, even though we began as like a democratization, screw the major labels kind of a thing, we ended up agreeing to essentially be the e-commerce platform for 4 of the 5 major record labels. So we began doing all of the merchandise for Rihanna, Green Day, Eminem, Kid Rock, like all of the biggest artists in the world. And then that company was sold to Platinum Equity and the Gores Group, 2 large private equity firms here in LA, in May of 2012. So it's been a long time.
Was that the right move, the pivot versus quitting and starting something new?
I mean, it always comes back to like, what objective are we optimizing for?
Yeah.
I think if I'm optimizing for my own personal growth and my own morality, I think it was absolutely the right move. If I were giving advice to an entrepreneur without understanding what's going on between their ears, I think it was the wrong move, because I think there's a real life is short, and the older I get, the more I appreciate the finitude of life, and how again, the relationship with quitting has changed dramatically. And so I do think, I remember meeting with Sean Rad around that same time, and he was a few years younger than me, and his VC was a friend of mine. He said, I'd like this young entrepreneur, Sean, he's got this company named Adley. They just raised a big round, and I went and chatted with him, and it was like, he was just, and I don't mean this in a bad way, just as a matter of fact way, he was just ruthless around, if I'm not spending every second of every day on my biggest and best idea, I'm failing myself, my family, and the world. And so he just raised, I think, a Series B with Adley in this beautiful office, hiring all these people, and he was already like quitting. He's already like, I'm out. This isn't big enough idea. This isn't. And I was like, wow. There was a moment that I sat there in his office, and I was supposed to go give him advice. And I remember thinking, man, I don't have that quality, or at least I don't have that belief. And it took me a long time to figure out, did I want it? Did I not want it? Was he right and I wrong? Or was I right? And it just depends. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but there's certainly a quality there, and a ruthlessness and a shrewdness and a sense of urgency that I do think a lot of great entrepreneurs possessed, that I think for me, I was like, I'm just going to fight tooth and nail, never give up, and just crawl my way across the finish line. And he would have just been like, I'm out. I'm on to the next thing. So we're just very different in that way.
I mean, I guess it comes down to what your definition of success is. And for some people, maybe it's, building the biggest thing and living up to their ultimate potential and having the hugest impact. But maybe some of that is from ego, or some of that's from trauma. And it's really hard to know when you're advising somebody, but it's also hard to know yourself as an entrepreneur, because we have so much conditioning,
That's right?
Can you fast forward to where you are now, because you're a more evolved entrepreneur, you have so much more experience. I think one of the things I respect most about you is just how you lead and your views around the people that work with you. So what are you building now?
So I would say I have two companies. One is a construction company. One is an investment and development company. The investment company is focused on affordable housing, and specifically, being the leader of affordable housing in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the least affordable city in the United States, and it is a problem of epic proportions. By no means do I expect to solve that, but we intend to kind of lead the battle towards it.
Mm-hmm. And then the second piece?
It's a general contractor. So my construction company builds all of my investment company's projects, and we also build custom homes. Some of that is with Bree, my wife, who runs an interior design company.
Who's also a peak performer in her own right. So what have you learned that you're applying from sports now that's kind of creating the frameworks and maybe even systems for you in business? Yeah.
Oh man, so much. There's so many things in sports. It's fascinating how important context is in life, right? So in the context of sports, you can see grown men go and smack each other on the ass, and that's normal. You can see grown men going around and looking in the mirror and screaming mantras at themselves, and that's normal. You can see grown men crying at the end of a game, and that's normal. And on and on and on. You apply that in your business or in your personal life or in your social life, and you are a total outcast in society. But what sports people have realized is actually how to access peak performance through accessing your inner world, right? One of the things that's so amazing about sports is that it forces you to be very vulnerable with your goals. Every single person in a stadium filled with 100,000 people knows that your goal is to score more points than the other team. Your goal is to stop them or whatever. It's all very, very clear. It's all out on the line. Most people live a life where they're not vulnerable. You don't really know what's out there. And no matter what, it's like, well, yeah, it's not what I wanted. They're just living, going through the motions. Here, it's very explicit. This is what I'm trying to accomplish, and you either do or you don't. There's an extraordinary amount of vulnerability and courage that comes along with that I think is important, that I've tried to recreate in business as much as possible. other aspects, and I can go on forever, but there's other aspects where we all have a shared scoreboard. So you find in a company, particularly ones that get larger and larger, we don't I know my little cog in the wheel, what my little job is, but I have no idea how that rolls up to the overarching goals of the business. We don't have, a kind of a shared scoreboard. We have no transparency. Everything is transparent in football or in sports, right? You know exactly what everybody's stats are, how much time is left. In business, you have no idea. People lack context. And so I've really worked hard in any of the companies that I've built to create massive context, because I think context give people an opportunity to contribute their greatness towards the common goal. I think another thing in sports is how important practice is and how important it is to really step into an observer role. You spend more time watching yourself on film than you do in practice or in a game. So you go out there, we practice, it's all on film, and that might be an hour and a half. And then you spend 3 hours in the film room in front of your entire team, and every single aspect of your decisions, of your mechanics, of your execution are evaluated on full display in front of the entire team, right? So just that idea that we are stepping out of ourselves and we are being vulnerable, we're being clear with our objectives, we have the support and the transparency of everybody else on the team, with the whole idea of becoming the best versions of ourselves in service of something beyond myself, of the team to win, those dynamics are so powerful that I've done really everything in my capacity to try to emulate those and recreate those in a business context. And every single time that I do it, I'm like, gosh, I wish I did more of this. I wish I did more. And I'm trying to do more and more of that now. But there are so many headwinds just because it's so counterculture. There's just a way that everybody kind of operates. And I'm like, yeah, but this is a dumb way. This is not the most optimal way. So we're going to say, fuck that. Let's be smart and let's do something that actually gives us a chance to be the best versions of ourselves.
So for people who don't have a leader like you that's sort of creating this context for them, because a lot of the listeners on this show, they're entrepreneurs and they're coaches, what are some things that they could maybe measure themselves by, or if they created their own scorecard? Because you're looking a lot more at the inner world, right?
Yes.
So share what some of those...
Yeah, so a friend of mine was the head of human performance at Red Bull. And you may not know much about what they did, or maybe you do, but Red Bull is extraordinary. I mean, they are absolutely at the cutting edge of human performance. What their extreme athletes do is incredible. And so I was so fascinated to have this conversation with my buddy. And I'm like, what are you measuring? And of course, they're measuring all of the bio stuff, and they're measuring this, and they're measuring that. And he says, yeah, but the things that matter most, you can't measure. And there was something about when he said that, I'm like, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to measure that. And so that kind of began a little bit of a fascination and an obsession for me to study that, and realizing that 95% at least of our life experience is being driven by our subconscious. And our subconscious is there without our consent, without our awareness, let alone without our consent. And so trying to teach people to become consciously aware of their subconscious, and then figuring out a way to identify what exists, ask yourself, does that serve what you actually want in your life? And if it doesn't, great, we now know that it's there. How do we design something that's more empowering? And then begin to track that, and then to begin to develop beliefs and feelings and habits that are more in alignment with the best version of yourself. I've begun to do that, and even for me, as I've done that, it felt like this should be a passion project. This should be a side project. This should be independent of business or relationship or whatever else. And every single time that I've begun to do it, I'm like, no, this is so integral to everything, that every single part of my life is improved when I bring it back into that context. And so I've begun to kind of experiment with that with some of my closer relationships, some of my employees, et cetera, who have been open to doing it. And it's been absolutely transformative to the way that we work together. So I've been working on a bunch of these things and these ideas, and I'm just so excited to continue to spend time on them.
Yeah, and I'm excited to keep reading about them, because you're now starting to share your thoughts and your words on LinkedIn. And every day it's just more wisdom that I get to download into my brain. And recently you did a post that I thought was just so great that when my partner came home, I was like, babe, you got to sit down. I got to read you Brandon's post today. And I recited it. And he was like, all right, enough of this. But you said that you have no bad days. You said that you basically treat it like Brandon boot camp. So explain no bad days.
Yeah. So, Steve, I think that our purpose, and this is not unique to me or you or Angel or anybody else, I think that our purpose here on earth is to become the best, fullest versions of ourselves. I really genuinely believe that is our highest calling in life. And I believe that if you use that as your purpose, then the most effective outlook is that everything and anything happening to you is happening for you and is in support of your learning and growth. And your greatest opportunities for breakthrough are usually things that are initially perceived as bad, right? It's that resistance, it's the uncomfortable conversation, it's the perceived loss. It's all these things that feel like bad days, but it's a little bit of a not yet. There's that Chinese parable, are you familiar with that one, where he has a group of horses and the horses all run away and everyone says, are you familiar with this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so I take more of a not yet mentality where even when it's hard, I don't by any means pretend that this is a natural way to think. In fact, it's a entirely unnatural way to think. But I really, really try intentionally to think, okay, let me be grateful for this problem and let me be open to the gift that this is giving me. What could this be? What is this here to teach me? What can I learn from this? How do I apply this to my life? And if you take a sincere, genuine approach to that and you're genuinely open to there being a gift to come from it, every single time it's like, here it is. Here's the lesson. Thank you. And so I just try, just as a practice, to have gratitude for it, ask myself, what is the lesson? What is the gift? And then learn and grow from it. And then, so that's kind of where I come from. So if you have something that is perceived to be bad and you take that mindset, you just get out of it. But let's just say that you're having a bad day and you don't have that willpower, that strength. For me, the maximum amount of time that I give myself to ever be in the shitter is an hour. That's the max. Like absolute. And usually I'm like 2 minutes where I'm like, feel bad about myself. This thing, I wanted this deal. This person left. The investor fell through. Whew. Okay, I'm back. Let's go.
Yeah.
I've really tried to develop that skill to where I don't sit in my own misery. I allow myself to feel that. And so I almost have like a mini mindfulness meditation around it to where I feel that feel, and then I just let it pass. And then I step back into the identity or the embodiment that I feel is most empowering for me.
It's a bit the obstacle is the way coded and Kabbalah coded. And I was actually listening to a Napoleon Hill video on YouTube yesterday, and he was talking about practicing your aura because it's not natural for everyone to kind of have the most positive thought. And I do think it's a mental training ground. I feel like I do not have a naturally positive mindset in any way. I usually am pretty negative, and I will go to like the doomsday situation where I expect the shoe to drop. And anytime something good happens, I'm like, okay, great. Now something bad's going to happen. And I found that in breath work, when I look at that pattern, when I see where my nervous system goes, when I see the pattern I have from childhood of things going extremely well when I'm with my father all summer, and then bam, the flight hits and it's pure ambiguity. And that cycle happened every single year. I've adopted this pattern where every time something is going well, I expect it to go wrong. And I found that breathwork is the tool that really expands my mind. It helps me to see other solutions. Well, where can it go right? If I'm really zooming out of the macro picture of this, what is this developing in me? Like, who is this making me become? Okay, I'm learning patience through this. I'm learning resilience through this. And I think that if more people understood that it's about who you're becoming and what you can hold and the success that you don't sabotage because you've had these little micro training obstacles along the way, we'd probably have a lot more fulfilled and resilient entrepreneurs in the world.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, listen, we're so wired to be focused on outcomes. And we're so attached to things that are outside of ourselves that we have no control over. And you are, with that approach, which I believe we all have by default off the shelf, we are wired to have our own happiness and fulfillment contingent upon something that is an outcome or an attachment beyond our control. And so you are fundamentally doomed from the beginning. It's like walking into a Vegas casino. Like, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
So I believe that the shift that people need to make is not focusing on outcomes and really falling in love. Like, the joy is in the journey. What is that process? And that process of learning and growing and getting better every single day. And that success will be the byproduct of that. And the other aspect of it is, most people, when there's a thing that they think they want, like that man, that investor, that exit, that whatever, it's only the feeling that they get when they achieve that thing. And that thing is so fleeting. It's like a millisecond, boom, gone. And I've experienced that.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. I'm going to wait a year to postpone feeling happy or proud or whole or whatever that thing is. And so ultimately, I really like to try to figure out, well, what is it that I want to feel? And then I try to just feel that way as often as possible.
Yeah.
And the irony of it is when you are only focused on the process, not the outcome, and when you try to manufacture the feeling that you want from the outcome anyways, usually it will produce that outcome in a higher probability and a faster, more accelerated timeline anyways. So it just seems like it just makes so much sense to do it, but it requires deliberate practice. It's not like you read it in a book and then you automatically are that way. Even for me, having read the book, done the practice every single day, like, the knobs are gradually going back in the wrong direction. You got to come back and focus on it. It's a daily practice.
It is a daily practice. And I think that that's probably the biggest and best takeaway that everybody can take, is training yourself to feel the emotion of what it is that you want without needing your external circumstances to match it, because that is how you start to create the opportunities and live in that energy anyways. Okay. Another question for you. Who's more positive, you or your wife, Bree?
I think we're positive in different ways. I'll take the political answer here. She probably has higher peak positivity than me. When she's just aligned and happy and creative and social and in her element, I mean, she's like at a frequency that I probably don't get to. I think that I maintain and regulate positivity probably on a more consistent basis. And it's not that she has like these like terrible crashes or anything like that, but I'm just generally in that state, like all day, every day.
Well, I saw her on Friday, right? We were all together and we were saying that our slogan, our mantra in our life is, what would Brandon do? What would Brandon do in this situation? Okay. I want to switch gears a little bit, or maybe it's actually connected, because something that you've been talking about that is advanced for me, and I think I've read a lot of books and done a lot of healing, and I'm pretty consistent. I'm extremely consistent in my spiritual practice. But you talk about the infusion of love in business.
Yeah.
And doing things from the heart. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. I mean, I've, like you, have read a lot about the mind, and there's still a lot more for me to learn about the mind. But more recently, I've been learning about the heart. And I feel like the heart is so much more powerful than the mind and so much less understood. And so when I look back at all of the things that I've wanted to experience and to accomplish in my life, the greatest impediment to almost all of those was fear. And fear separates and isolates. And when you are separate and isolated, you limit your creativity, your imagination, your identity as a possibilitarian. Love makes all of those things go away. When you are embodying the energy of love, you are connected, you are integrated, and you are tapped into infinite opportunities and possibilities. And so that ultimately is the most powerful force in the world, I believe, is love. For a long time in my life, I really anchored around strength. And a lot of that strength was driven by fear. And so my isolation and disconnection was, I can do it by myself. I don't need anybody. That was that almost like a David Goggins type attitude, me against the world. And I have a lot of gratitude for that, because it created drive and achievement and discipline and accomplishment in a lot of ways, but it leaves you feeling unfulfilled. And it dramatically constrains the opportunities and the resources that are available to you. And it's just not that fun to live that way. When you operate from a place of love, I think you can have your cake and eat it too. And so what I realize is that so much of my worldview was being shaped by this perception of strength, and specifically my own strength, and this idea that I could do it all on my own. Yeah. Whereas when you ground in love, you have infinitely more power and resources than you could ever have on your own. Regardless, if you're a He-Man, superhuman, it doesn't matter. You're still just one human being. And I think when you tap into love, there's a certain degree of selflessness that comes along with that. And that selflessness results in fearlessness. And when you don't have fear, you can go after anything. And I think that dramatically accelerates the pathway to achievement. And I think it also grounds you in deep alignment and fulfillment at each step of the way. Instead of saying, I'm going to postpone all of that until I achieve an outcome, you just have it. And you have it in every waking moment of your life. So I've just found that the idea of strength that, at least in my own construct, was complete bullshit. And the strength that is exponentially stronger is love.
I mean, it's so powerful. For me, it almost feels too advanced. Like it feels very enlightened. I want to debate this because I guess my construct is that everything should be intuitive. And that's what leads you to your highest fulfillment and meaning and potential. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about the difference between, because we're both sort of agreeing that it's not in your head. It's not logic based, because there's too many limiting beliefs, conditioning, your caretakers did, defense mechanisms. There's something more. There's a bigger energy that you can tap into. For you, it's love. For me, it's intuition, because I feel like when you're intuitive, you're tapping into something greater than you. You're getting downloads from source or God or universe or whatever that looks like about things that need to be created in the world, or the ways to say something that might transform someone's mind, or innovation of a product that could, help people feel empowered. So what would you say to me, who doesn't necessarily feel safe making it about love and feels like, I guess, the highest tier is intuition?
Where do you think, if you put intuition somewhere physically in your body, where would it sit?
I want to say gut, just to disagree with you, but yeah, it would be in your heart.
Oh, I was going to say gut also.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
No, I think if you're really listening and you're really still in your body, like you would feel it more in your chest.
Yeah. I think probably both can be right. Most of the time, when we think of the logical part of ourselves, it's in the mind.
Yeah.
And when we think of the intuitive part of ourselves, it's in the gut. And the great connective tissue, if you will, is your heart. And for me, a lot of times my intuition, at least my gut intelligence, was completely constrained because my heart was closed. And so I would literally feel myself like because if I got out of my head and was calling something from my intuition, there was no one on the other end of the line, because it has to go through the heart. The heart is what allows you to connect both your mind and your gut. And I think that when you have it, it's like a 1 + 1 = 3 type scenario. So I've found that for the majority of my life, I really anchored around logic. And then I began to realize how incredibly illogical my logical mind was.
Yeah.
And I started to actually map out a lot of these decisions that I was making and realizing, oh my God, these are illogical. Like, this is a farce.
Yeah.
And that was a really powerful realization for me that I would say was transformative on a lot of levels. And so that's kind of what put me down the path of, okay, but like, let me study this. Like, what's actually happening here? And it's what I realized, that it's literally going from your head, trying to be in communication and in concert and alignment with your gut, with your intuition, and your heart being closed didn't allow me to access that. So when I find that I really am connected to my heart and my heart is open, I'm getting the best of all worlds.
And how do you open your heart? Are you tapping into, your family? Are you seeing your girls and then you're kind of getting into that energetic space and then going to work? Is that your process?
I think there's a lot of, it's like, how do you get in shape, right? It's like you could swim or run or lift weights or do Pilates or, I think there's a lot of different ways to access that. There's a lot of felt experience or more of just somatic exercises that allow for me personally just to feel my heart opening up that work very well for me. I love breath work. I love meditation. There's a lot of other visualization exercise that allow me to do that. But the more I do it, the faster I can do it and the more powerful it is. Yeah. So even just to put my hand on my heart and breathe into it for a minute, I feel so much stress like melt away.
Yeah.
And it really feels like I open, like all parts of me open up.
Speaking about breath work and opening up, I'm going to be taking you through a session right now.
Okay.
How can I best serve you? Is there a goal or any clarity that you need in your life right now?
Let's see here. I'm not sure. Let's see what comes up for our intuition. Okay. I don't know.
All right. I'll do it intuitively then.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do it. How was your HypnoBreathwork session?
Beautiful.
First song had you just drop in. Second song had you explore the word purpose. What was coming up for you?
This is a very different experience than the one I had 22 minutes ago. I feel like I'm in like a alternate universe right now. Ask me the question again.
What came up for you when I said the word purpose?
So this is where Brandon takes time to process things.
Take your time. I know how thoughtful and intentional you are, and I want to respect that process.
No, I just... It's interesting how time plays a factor, because I feel all of the sequences at once. I feel the purpose component, the fear component, the love component, the action component, all at once. And so literally my brain is sequencing those. It's crazy, like actually how it all, because it's more, they all kind of coalesce around the same feeling for me.
Then those were my vocal prompts to you that you just listed out per song.
Yeah.
So instead of having you sort of break it down in chronological order, let's take that out and let's just talk about how you're feeling and what's the most prominent thing that came up for you.
Yeah, so I'll go back to the heart that really feels a certain coherence for me when I'm doing that type of breath work, that it feels very open, very powerful, very infinite, very like out of body, which is why for me it's hard to gather my thoughts right now, because I feel in a weird way like I'm not in my mind. So going back into my mind almost feels like it's doing a disservice to the felt experience, if that makes sense. There are certain experiences that you have that language doesn't capture the essence of. So, so that's that. So I feel fear usually in my gut and in my shoulders. The visual that you asked feels like brown, thick mud holding me back. There's fear around identities and commitments and relationships where my identities and my commitments mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
That feel totally at odds with purpose in the way that I've thought about it historically. I've always thought about purpose for me like independent of work.
Oh, interesting.
And it isn't excuse me, until more recently where I've found ways to integrate purpose into my work, regardless of what that work is. Even if that work specifically isn't in full alignment with where I think I can create full and maximal impact, there's still a certain energy and a certain belief system that can be brought to all facets of my life.
Yes.
That I've kind of begun to appreciate, which has actually allowed my evolution to unfold in a much more kind of a natural and accelerated way, because it felt mutually exclusive in my mind. Like this or that. You can only have one or the other. And I do believe that there is a world in which not only you can but should have both, because a lot of those beliefs that I have, I feel like I can only have those beliefs in a safe space away from identities and commitments of people in this context. So here, I don't have constraints or fear or of the mud. If I start all over in a new career with new relationships from scratch, that's fear driving that, because, and it's also a lack of creativity, where I'm lacking the creativity to imagine how to apply that first and foremost with what's right in front of me.
Right.
And I've begun to do that, as I mentioned before, even in conversations with investors, employees, and so forth. And each time I've done it with some degree of trepidation.
Yeah.
And every time the result has been surprisingly positive. And even when it was negative, it was surprisingly positive because it felt right and it felt aligned for me. So the feeling overall is a feeling of continuing to connect with that, and continuing to have the courage and the strength, but the strength coming from love. Because my strength, as I mentioned before, is really strong and really stubborn and really fearful, and keeps me stuck in old identities. And so when I open up, and it is more coming from a place of love, that love sees no constraints, sees no context, and in a way doesn't even have a relationship with myself. It's like self-transcendent in that way, which is, I think, a really important part of the process, is just to get out of your own ego and into that higher frequency that I'm unattached from.
I think it's a really important conversation to have, sort of the more practical and logistical side of purpose, because for some people they think, you know, I have real life responsibilities and I have to provide, and I can't just follow this passion and do the thing that lights me up. But we have different definitions of purpose. For you, it's living up to your fullest potential, I think is how you said it. For me, it's the combination of your skills, your experiences, and being of service. And in that definition, it allows you to be a little bit more fluid and nuanced in your current situation. And I think that's why I love the HypnoBreathwork every single morning, because it makes your thinking less black and white, and it allows you to find sort of the intuition and the insights to blend worlds and to start that process where it's not so jarring. And I think you're right, you are doing it because you're living your purpose within the organization, say, or in your management style, or in your leadership. You're mentoring your team, you're writing thought pieces on LinkedIn, and it's really powerful to see you start to step into that. Did you have a next action step?
I have a long laundry list of next action steps. Can we hear a few? Yeah, I mean,
from the breathwork specifically.
Well, I think specifically, I mean, there's some that are like small tactical ones, but I think that the one that's far more powerful is, again, coming back to kind of leading with your heart and allowing that. And by the way, heart in this context can be intuition. And we can use that interchangeably with the way that your intuition comes to you to guide your path. I mean that in the same way. And so rather, I'm a big planner. I'm a big goal setter. I like to see the big picture. And a lot of times I do that before taking the first step. And so a lot of the takeaways, if you will, is more of take the step and the path will reveal itself. Yeah. I would say that's probably the best way to sum it up.
In my research and in identifying patterns, the biggest block for most men was the fear of uncertainty and needing to know and needing to be in control, mostly because of the provider role and sometimes just because of conditioning and society. But you have proven to yourself time and time and again that you will figure out whatever comes your way. You don't actually need to know the quarterly, the 6-month, the 5-year goals and plans, because A, it never goes according to plan, and B, whatever situation comes in front of you, you will move with it in the present moment and you will figure it out in real time. My purpose, I believe, is to help other people get into alignment with their purpose. I think I have a very strong intuition and I get a lot of downloads and insights for people. And I just want to say to you right now on camera that I think you're an extremely special human. You're so intelligent and so wise beyond your years, and you're so incredibly generous and humble. And I feel like the world needs to hear a lot more from you. And I wish that we could all adopt 1/10 of your mindset.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, for being on the Mastery Experience.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed every minute of it.
And if you would like to try a HypnoBreathwork session similar to the one that Brandon just did, I would recommend the decision-making session on Mastry app. Thanks for tuning in. Shout out to Huel for sponsoring and partnering with the Mastery Experience.